something unique. Thank you all for coming. I'm Vanessa Douglas, one of the career advisors in the State Services Office. And thank you again for coming because it's a pleasure to be able to get Mr. Letten to come and speak to us. I know he has a busy schedule. And it was hard to get him to agree to come. I had to pay him off so long. Sorry about that. Anyway.
You offered to pay me off for lunch.
But I just want to give you a brief overview of Mr. Letten's career because I know the only thing he did wrong was he went to Tulane. But other than that, he's all right. But he has been U.S. Attorney since April of 2001. He has served, before that, he spent a total of 4 years in the Orleans Parish District Attorney's Office under then District Attorney Harry Connick. And he has served for over 25 years as a federal prosecutor. And he began with the U.S. Department of Justice Organized Crime and Racketeering Strike Force. And he became the chief of that strike force in March of 1988 and remained chief of the unit through its merger with the United States Attorney's Office in 1990. He was named the first assistant in August of 1994, and while in that position, Mr. Letten served as a lead prosecutor in the investigation, prosecution, and successful conviction of the former Governor, Edwin Edwards. Some of you probably know a little about that story. And he was initially appointed by U.S. Attorney General John Ashcroft as U.S. Attorney in April of 2001, and then he was appointed by President Bush, and subsequent Senate confirmation happened in July of 2005. As the United States Attorney, Mr. Letten has served on the Attorney General's advisory committees on national security, counterterrorism, environmental crimes, and violent crimes. And he has been active in the Department of Justice's role in the post-Katrina efforts to rebuild New Orleans Police Department and other local law enforcement agencies. Some of the awards Mr. Letten has received include the University of New Orleans Distinguished Alumnus of the Year in 2008. He was voted Top Attorney of 2007 by New Orleans Magazine, and also New Orleanian of the Year and Most Admired New Orleanian in 2008 and 2009. And if you had noticed lately, Gambit also named him the New Orleanian of the Year just in this most recent year, 2009. So, what more can I say? There's probably a lot more I could, but I'm going to let Mr. Letten do the talking. So, again, thank you for coming, and let's thank Mr. Letten for coming here. And without further ado, Mr. Letten.
Thank you, Ms. Douglas. Can I call you Vanessa?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, let me get some family matters out of the way because I really feel like I'm kind of surrounded by family here. We've got, first of all, our 4 law clerks up here who have distinguished themselves in our office. Jamie Lawson, Dietrich Cummings, Laura Milazzo, and Thomas Sanderson have all done just a fabulous job working with us. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that evolution, about the experiences of and the reliance we place on law clerks in our U.S. Attorney's Office. And first of all, thank you guys for doing a tremendous job and for really being an important part of our team. I've got some other folks out here. Dean Kleba, who has been a friend, and actually I will say this, Dean Kleba's son, Brian Kleba, was a law clerk, one of our best law clerks ever. It seems like yesterday, but it was several years ago. Brian graduated from this law school, distinguished himself, and went out and distinguished himself thereafter in the Buffalo District Attorney's Office in Buffalo, New York. Came back, wanted to come back home. He had paid his dues. He had gotten great experience. They loved him there. He did great work. And we hired him as an AUSA, Assistant U.S. Attorney. And he is actually one of our newest supervisory attorneys. He has distinguished himself as our lead prosecutor in child pornography and child predator cases, and is now our private state childhood coordinator. So he is someone on whom we rely a lot. In fact, I'll say it's a great pleasure for me to go out personally with Brian to schools, grammar schools, high schools, talk to kids, students, what have you, about the dangers that are out there for young people and beyond the economic dangers, frauds, and things like that. It's very, very serious. I got my your chaplain here, Arlene Wiltz, is my cousin, my first cousin, and with whom I grew up. And I'm always happy to see you. I love you. everybody knows you. I always ask you, do you know Arlene? Yeah, we sure we know Arlene. 10 years, okay. I'm fine.
Most of your godmother.
You are good. She's my godmother. Arlene's my godmother.
I want to say he's always good on him, but I can't get away with it.
But, no, that's, yeah, I wouldn't do that because I knew you'd get mad at me, so. And then, actually, and I've got really family here. You're David Spinner. You're 2L. 1L. You're going into 2L. Okay. David Spinner is, I feel like David's one of my own. David is the nephew of my closest buddy that I grew up with, Joey Lipo, who is also an attorney by profession and who has distinguished himself in private practice, but also as legal advisor at Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office. And I'm sure other folks out here in the audience that I know or should know, but so it's nice just to recognize you guys and thank you all for everything you've done. I'm gonna, for those of you who have, because of the nature of this, those of you who are English majors or forced to read James Joyce, the stream of consciousness thing, that's probably what you're going to get from me right now. I'm going to sort of range in and out and just talk to you a little bit about the world from in my experience, from my perspective as the U.S. Attorney and as a native of New Orleans. You got a little bit of the bio. By the way, we updated, Vanessa, we updated the bio. I'm really excited that I was having, in addition to serving on some of the Attorney General's advisory subcommittees, I just got appointed about 3 months ago to the Attorney General's Advisory Committee. So, which is very exciting for me because it's now I'm a part of a small cadre of about 15 U.S. attorneys from around the United States, and we regularly meet with the Attorney General and advise him on major policy issues. So we get to meet our Attorney General, by the way, Eric Holder. If you ever get a chance to see him speak or meet with him, or if he's ever at a forum, go see him. The guy is amazing. He grew up in the Department of Justice, literally. He started with what's called the Honors Program. How many of you have heard of the Honors Program? Okay, there you go. He had distinguished himself in law school, went to into the department in the Honors Program, very, very young. Ended up as an attorney, as a prosecuting attorney in public integrity, and actually served again later, served as a judge. Later then came back to the department. He was the U.S. attorney during the Clinton administration in the District of Columbia, where I kind of got to know him, and became the Deputy Attorney General, the #2 under the AG, during the end of that. And actually, I think served for 14 days as the Acting Attorney General at the end of that administration. He's back. He's the AG. He's the man. He's the chief federal law enforcement official in the entire United States. And what strikes me about Eric Holder is how absolutely accessible he is, and how informal he is, and what a great, how great it is to interact, how easy it is to interact with him on the most important matters of state and law and policy, and on the most casual matters. It is such a joy to talk to him and to meet with him and to speak with him and to work with him and to sit across the table from him. It is absolutely amazing. And I might add too that he has, I've spoken with him directly, not only in the context of the AGAC, but on matters affecting New Orleans. Sitting down with him and the DAG, the Deputy Attorney General, for relatively long periods of time, and just doing basically a one-on-one about some of the challenges we have here. We did it just about a couple of months ago. I met with him again on it a couple of weeks ago, actually last week in D.C. And so he is extremely engaged, very personally engaged in the issues and the challenges that we have here in the city, in this region, which, as you all know, having been here, are pretty extraordinary. They're absolutely amazing. And I think and the challenges we have here are, maybe not all the challenges are unique, but one of the things that drove those to critical mass, that being Katrina, makes us unique in all American cities in our experience, because now for an American city that was fundamentally destroyed, 80% was submerged by a natural disaster, almost complete displacement of our population. So now we've got a rebuilding, regrowth situation. We should be farther along than we are. Quite frankly, we've been We've been way too adrift in some quarters for the last 6 years, just 5 to 6. But I think we're in some quarters are making extraordinary headway, and we're poised to make great headway. So that's just sort of an introduction to the AGAC. Speaking of Katrina, I got another appointment recently, and I don't know if I'll be able to do all these things, but my success has been driven by my ability and willingness to recognize my own limitations, which are significant and many, and to surround myself with and seek and take the counsel of bright, energetic, honest, reliable people with good judgment and know when to take that. That will always serve you well. But I just got, in fact, tomorrow I officially am taking over as the Executive Director of the National Center for Disaster and Recovery Fraud, which has its National Command Center in Baton Rouge on LSU's campus. I don't know how many people went to LSU undergrad? There you go. You know where Johnston Hall is? Well, it's in the, you know that. You've been up there, right in the shadow of the stadium. Actually, what's interesting about that is and I'm sort of doing the sort of stream of consciousness thing, but I think this is all relevant. In literally days after Katrina, recognizing, but mind you, I'm on the phone with the Attorney General probably 6-7 times a day, beginning with Katrina's landfall and continuing for about 3 months thereafter. And we're, Dave Dugas, who is the outgoing U.S. Attorney in Baton Rouge, who's leaving Friday, who's been there for 9 years as well. We worked in tandem because my office relocated our operations to Baton Rouge. And but recognizing that with any disaster, with a disaster of the magnitude of Katrina, that there would be unprecedented amounts of money, whether through the private sector, through business rebuilding investment, but more importantly, public funds coming in the form of grants, whether it's through FEMA or congressional grants or earmarks or Department of Justice grants, that there would be a concomitant criminal demand for that money, that anytime you have those kind of resources pouring into an area, you would have a criminal element that would try to exploit those, and that would try to engage in fraud. And the criminal element would be diverse. It would be everything from citizens who are unscrupulous, who would want to get funds that they weren't entitled to perhaps even professional fraudsters, people who would set up false charities or engage in other types of activities. So while the city's still underwater, the Attorney General directs that the building of at the time it was called the National Katrina Fraud Task Force. It kind of metamorphosed away from that, grew away from that very shortly thereafter, because Rita hits the western part of the coast thereafter. So it was, it became something far broader than that. And the command center, as it turned out, the command center was chosen. They wanted to set it up in New Orleans, but we didn't have any infrastructure in New Orleans. I mean, we didn't have electricity, we didn't have water. It was not a likely place. We couldn't populate it because the city was still underwater. And so rather than have that get sacrificed on the altar of ego and politics, we just said, put the damn thing as close as you can. And so it went into Baton Rouge and Johnston Hall. And what's really fascinating is that command center has remained there and has become very successful, robust mechanism. It was one of my assistant U.S. attorneys actually started it up, kicked it off. Dave Dugas took over the oversight of it. It is the command center for disaster fraud, for referral and tracking of all disaster fraud cases for the entire United States of America. It is populated by representatives of the major federal agencies, in fact, almost all federal investigative agencies, certainly FBI, who is sort of a host, but